My name's Sean Culey. I'm a visiting fellow at Cranfield University and also the author of the book Transition Point, as well as being a business transformation advisor working across the world, helping organizations and public health authorities to transform to the current reality. Now, I'd like to take you through one thing that's been vexing me for a number of years, which is, people have been talking about it's a VUCA world. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex and ambiguous. And this term has been used for quite some time. In fact, ever since about 2008, since the financial crash to 2019, we've been saying we've been going through the VUCA years. So we're pretty exhausted by the look of this, these whole periods of disruption. And then came 2020, and of course we now know that that was nothing compared to the current level of transition and current level of disruption that we're going through right now. But of course, when people talk about it being a VUCA world, one thing they never answer is why? Why is it so disruptive right now? Certainly when I started in business in the 1980s and the 1990s, it didn't seem to be anything like as disruptive as it is right now. And this really intrigued me. Intrigued me so much that I spent 6 years of my life finding out why is it so disruptive right now and writing a book called Transition Point. Now, one of the big findings in this book was that actually what's driving progress ever since the Industrial Revolution is long cycles of capitalism, what's been named waves of creative destruction by the Austrian economist Joseph Schumpeter. And in the upswing period, this is where we have all of the innovations happen, where we get new power supplies and new communication mechanisms, new industries, lots of experimentation, lots of entrepreneurship. And in the downswing period, then we're much more focused on efficiencies and exploiting the investments and innovations that we've already made. Now, we've had 5 of these waves of creative destruction, and a 5th one collapsed in 2008 with the financial crash. And as you can see here, my research identified that each one had a new power source, had a new transport mechanism, created a communication mechanism, and out of that came a whole host of new industries. And each one of these waves have been getting a little bit more frequent, a little bit more impactful. They've been diffusing across the globe quicker, and their scope has been increasing, mainly because we've been dealing with globalization now. So digital products now obviously move a lot quicker than the old physical products of the past, which used to travel across the world by sailboat. Now digital products move across the world instantaneously. And of course, now we have the whole world involved in the process of industrialization, whereas in the first industrial revolution, it was pretty much just Britain, Western Europe. We are now, however, in the upswing of the 6th wave, and this is by far the most disruptive period of all. This is when all of the new innovations start to break cover and they start to disrupt all the old industries, hence the term creative destruction. And one of the things that's been quite interesting in the power shifts that is taking place in the 6th wave is it's shifted the balance of power between the customer and the manufacturer, meaning that actually consumers now have much more power but also much greater expectations, and then using their expectations and that power to force retailers and to force manufacturers to do things that generally they don't want to do. To give an implication of this, the first one that was really disrupted was media. So in the 5th wave, the broadcaster was completely in control about what we watched and when we watched it. We would go into work the next day, and if someone said, "Did you see the film?" they would know exactly what film we were talking about because there was only one film on that channel last night, or that TV last night. So the family sat around a single box watching the same programs. Everyone knew what was on because it was in a schedule that was defined by the broadcaster. Yet now we're in the 6th wave. Now we're in a Netflix world. So now we can have 4 different people sat next to each other watching 4 different programs on 4 different devices at the time of their choosing. So now the consumer is in control. They're determining what they want to watch and when they want to watch it and on what device they want to watch it. There is no radio or TV times moving forwards. Now the agenda is being set by the customer, not the broadcaster. And it's creating a new breed of digital natives, people who are becoming so conversant with technology like this young Chinese girl here, that they actually don't see it anymore as technology. It's just the way things are done nowadays. So as you can see here, she's just buying these goods using her smartwatch. She doesn't see a transition from an old way of working to a new way of working. This is just the way she buys goods. And the one thing we've learned about these new consumers is that convenience is everything. So companies like Uber Eats and DoorDash and Just Eats being able to provide on-demand goods and services, removing the inconvenience of actually having to go to the shop to get them, or go to the restaurant, or go to the takeaway, is proving to be a boom industry right now. So the new millennials and the Gen Zs are saying no to a number of things that we used to take for granted. Commitment to large debts or car loans or mortgages, the concept of ownership, and even making big investments in the future. And instead of looking at convenience, having access rather than owning assets, and looking for instant gratification because trends are changing so quickly. Supplying this new business model increases the complexity exponentially, however, for supply chain managers and for retailers and for manufacturers. Because rather than just pushing products straight to one source, the retailer, where the customer then comes to them, now the retailers, the manufacturers, the designers have to understand exactly what the customer wants and be able to deliver it to where they want it. So we've moved from a linear supply push chain to where effectively the supply chain is a circle with the consumer at the center. So in the fifth wave, this was pretty much everyone's weekend. Everyone's weekend involved going to a large supermarket, picking up the products for the rest of the week, putting in your shopping trolley, moving to the kiosk, paying for it, and then leaving. This took up a large amount of our weekends. Now, however, the retailer delivers to where the customer wants, which means that could be to your house, or to the boot of your car, or to a smart locker, or even inside your house with things like the Amazon Key product that allow people to have access to a smart lock that allows you to put the goods inside your house so that no one can steal them off your porch. One of the other things that's changed, in order for e-commerce to take off, we had to be able to return goods that we didn't like. So now 2/3 of e-commerce customers check the returns policies before making a buying decision. And rather than being a very, very small part of the business, usually some tiny corner of the fulfillment center or the warehouse, now 30% of e-commerce sales return. So it's now the single biggest source of inventory into most warehouses. And then you have companies like Amazon that keep ratcheting up the pressure all the time. So it used to be that if you received your goods within a week, that was perfectly fine and acceptable. 10 years later, and now companies like Amazon are saying, no, we will get the goods to you within the same day. And they're spending a huge amount of money on being able to support that promise. They're also moving into other industries like supermarkets, like grocery sales, so that they can actually put the pressure on those organizations as well. Now, this creates an immediate competitive response, and this is why we see the massive upswing take place and so much disruption in this point in time. The moment one incumbent starts using these technologies in order to deliver faster, better solutions, then immediately the competition has to do the same. So we see companies like Walmart and Tesco's taking on Amazon, reacting to this, and actually also offering same-day delivery. Now, what that means is same-day delivery has gone from being an absolute exception that you would have to pay a fortune for to the new normal. And because companies like Amazon have gone from being, booksellers that they were 20 years ago to now the seller of the everything store, the creator of the everything store. So effectively, you can buy pretty much anything you want now off Amazon, which was entirely the objective from the get-go. And it's proving to be enormously good business. So moving from 2004 to 2019, you can see that Amazon's revenue as an e-commerce retailer has gone from 6.92 billion per year to 280 billion. And this year has been an exponential growth. 2020 is going to be much higher in terms of the difference for Amazon revenue than 2018 was to 2019. Now, this move to e-commerce is causing severe disruption in the old retail models. It's causing the apocalypse, the retail apocalypse, which means that you were seeing all of these old shopping malls and stores and the old ways that we used to shop, the ways we used to go to weekends to supermarkets or we used to go to shopping malls, they're closing down incredibly rapidly. And the pandemic, of course, is accelerating this with people who are effectively locked away and unable to go to places where we used to congregate in vast numbers. So it's accelerating this apocalypse. And we can see companies like Zara, for example, the retail kings, it's currently having to close 1,200 fashion stores. And there's a plan, if you see there, they think that around 25,000 retail stores could close in 2020. I mean, that's devastating. So these meccas that we used to go to every weekend, these shopping malls where everyone used to go and they used to go to eat and to meet and to, basically spend their Saturdays and Sundays, they're now becoming shells. They're being abandoned in great numbers, specifically in the US, where this was the absolute norm. Wherever there was a population center, we were putting a shopping mall up. But it's happening across Europe as well. So developers who are looking at creating a shopping mall now know that they need to offer more than just shopping. They need to offer entirely new experiences. And here's a good example. So this is the Icon Siam Mall in Bangkok. And you can see it's got museums, it's got over 1,000 stores, but it's also got indoor floating markets, it's got restaurants, it's got cinemas. They're now becoming multi-purpose centers. In order to attract people, they have to be much, much more than just a place where stores can exist. Now, this upswing is a time of exponential progress. So this is when all of the developments happen and all of the new inventions come out. And to give you an example about how rapidly things transform in this period, if we go back to the third wave, we can see in 1908 here on the Fifth Avenue in New York, there was no cars on the road. As you can see, everyone's traveling about either by foot or in a horse-drawn carriage. Yet, if we move forward only 5 years, while people are still pedestrians and walking up and down the sidewalks, the horse-drawn carriages have all but gone, replaced entirely by motor cars. That's an entire paradigm shift in the way people moved around, happening in just 5 years. What does it look like in the sixth wave, however? Well, to show what it looks like, I'm going to use something called Moravec's paradox. This is based around an AI researcher called Hans Moravec. And he said, the one thing we've learned over 35 years of AI research is that hard things are easy for artificial intelligence to figure out. Things that we find hard, such as advanced calculuses, massive amounts of unstructured data, processing, huge amounts of information, they're very difficult for us. But actually, AI finds that incredibly easy to do. However, the things that we can do when we're toddlers, spatial awareness, walk, move, identify objects, recognize faces, are actually, incredibly hard to program. And if you go back just 5 years to 2015, and we looked at the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, otherwise known as DARPA's, annual competition to find the best robotics in the world through setting them a set of, very simple tasks like walking and opening doors, you would think that's absolutely correct. We are miles away from getting anything that looks like a, walking, talking toddler because they were falling over like drunks on a Friday night. Yet, just 4 years later, and Boston Dynamics was showing off its Atlas robots, doing gymnastics, doing backflips, doing bits of parkour. The Spot robot was moving around buildings autonomously, opening doors for other robots. Its Handle robot was working in logistics centers, picking and moving goods autonomously. So it's an exponential level of technological development in an incredibly small period of time. And this automation is now being pointed at the supply chain. And it's causing what I call the creative destruction triple whammy. So across the supply chain, from source all the way to sell, we're seeing the automation of things that used to take human fingers, nimble human fingers to do. So we've got the automation of physical tasks or muscle to machine. Now this has been going on for a while, but what hasn't been going on before is whammy number 2, which is the replacement of human minds with machines or the automation of knowledge-based and white-collar tasks. Now, this one has a lot of people spooked because previously they understood the ability to move dangerous, dull, or dirty jobs away from humans and move them into robotic hands. But the thinking bit, that was kind of the reserve of the human. Now we're seeing machines not only prove that they can do what we do, but in many cases they can do it more efficiently, cheaper, and much more powerfully. That brings me on to Whammy number 3, which is technological convergence. So this is the convergence of machine minds with machine hands. So now what we're seeing is artificial intelligence control towers basically controlling robots, 3D printers, autonomous vehicles, all collecting together and presenting it as a dashboard for a human to basically monitor what's going on. So we're seeing the automation of the entire end-to-end supply chain. And the real kicker is, of course, all 3 of these are happening at exactly the same time, affecting all of the different jobs and all of the different industries that they would take part in. One of the differences in this wave that most people fail to understand is a lot of the machines that are being developed aren't just replacing human jobs, as they have done ever since the first industrial revolution. They're actually replacing human capabilities. They can see, they can speak, they can hear, they can translate languages, and they can also capture vast amounts of data, which was the one thing that Moravec's paradox identified that we're not very good at. So, for example, I used to work in retail, and when I worked in retail, people would come in and they would ask for goods and I would serve them, and the boss might ask me at the end of the day, "How was your day?" The best I could manage was, well, it was either busy or it was quiet. I might remember 1 or 2 things maybe that I sold that day. Pepper, however, over here on the left, works in retail. And Pepper remembers every single interaction that she had. She remembers every customer that she spoke to. She had a photograph of it. She's got their entire customer database stored on her chest plate, as well as the entire range of products. She knows whether or not someone was able to be persuaded to buy something, whether or not they didn't buy it, what they were looking for. She's capturing a vast amount of data that simply humans couldn't do. And she's doing it for an incredibly low price point. Just $1,600 for initial rental and then $200 a month, whereas her colleagues over there in the manufacturing, Baxter and Sawyer, only cost $25,000 each. This is not a lot of money, but it's proven to provide an enormous amount of technological capability and flexibility. And they're getting smarter all the time. Now, as I said, we're in the upswing right now. And the one thing we've learned in the upswing is that humans are too slow. Our forecasting is too inaccurate. Our planning is much too infrequent. Our black swans are now becoming far too common. Human behavior is too irrational, and consumer expectations are too demanding. And our supply chains now need to react in real time. So they need to be changed in order to be able to move away from these old push models into these circular supply chains that actually are able to handle disruptions and manage demand deviations in real time. So these new wave expectations need new technological solutions. And these new technological solutions look a little bit like this. So no one was asking for a checkout store or a store where we could walk in, pick the goods up and just walk out. But that's exactly what Amazon has given us, because Amazon has realized the point I made earlier about convenience being a major winning point for the new consumer. We used to stand in line and queue to buy our goods every weekend, but that was a hassle to us. We accepted it because we didn't believe there was any other options. Now there are options. Amazon has realized that actually people would much rather just go into the store, pick up what they want, and leave. No need to unpack, no need to deal with a cashier, no need to spend any time doing anything that you don't want to do. Just pick up what you want and go. And through a combination of machine intelligence and sensors and facial recognition cameras, it's built these stores that is now rolling out across the US and planning to roll out across Europe. And you can see that here that it's already identified places in London and Germany to put these stores. And now it's realized it can do this with this technology. It's said, well, where else do people inconvenienced? Well, places like movie theaters when you're queuing for your popcorn, or airports where you're having to queue other things. So once they've proven this technology, it can be pointed to anywhere where humans are normally having to queue and be inconvenienced. So if we can take away the queue, we can take away the inconvenience. And it's now moving into the large supermarket space and saying, well, can we not put this technology not only in the ceilings and around the walls, but also into the shopping carts? So now your shopping cart becomes effectively your cash out till. As you put the goods in there, it's automatically weighing them and recording them, removing the inconvenience. Again, this creates an immediate competitive response. So now Tesco's are looking to do it, Sainsbury's are looking to do it, 7-Eleven's doing it, Walmart's doing it, and companies like over in Europe, Albert Heijn, are also eliminating their checkout. So once again, as soon as a company like Amazon makes a move into this space, provides a new alternative, it changes the expectations of the consumers, and everyone else has to catch up really, really quickly. So let's have a look at Albert Heijn and see what they're working on.
We are for a long time already filling grocery stores, delivering groceries to the customer. So we have a lot of knowledge and a lot of data available.
We have 10 million customers every week, and they shop at Albert Heijn online 24/7. So we really need a solution that can serve our customers anywhere, anytime. An example is Predict My List. Because we know what you buy online and we know what you buy offline, we can make a prediction for you what you will probably need next time in your shopping basket. And this way we can really offer you a very easy shopping experience from end to end.
We are currently testing in 4 stores a concept called Tap to Go. And basically the summary is that with a card or your phone, you walk into the store, tap the shelf, grab your product and just go. So basically we reduce the shopping journey from 3-4 minutes to 20 seconds. The next step I think is a very nice one, because with all the data we gather from people tapping the shelf, we can start helping them much better. Our dream is to add hyper-personalization, so real-time offers based on your contextual situation at that moment. And you can imagine many use cases we can implement to make people more happy, to have a better life in the morning, in the afternoon and in the evening.
So what we're seeing here is this hyper-personalization, where effectively you're capturing your online data and your offline data and being able to offer goods and services and deals to you as an individual. But one of the things they're realizing very quickly is, using all of this technology, some of the previous barriers as to where we place stores, and some of the ones that didn't make economic sense, maybe because the leases were too high or the location wasn't particularly convenient, didn't have enough footfall, can actually be overcome because they can actually create fully automated stores that are checkout free and contactless. So Albert Heijn here, the president, saying, the latest concept not only makes shopping very easy due to its autonomous nature, but this plug-and-play store can be placed in locations where there is a temporary need for a small store, from offices or university campuses to residential areas under construction that do not yet have shopping facilities. And of course, the other advantage is that they're always open, which means that it's useful for people who are on the road very early or very late. So we're now in a world where effectively we're looking at being able to place stores pretty much anywhere and have them open all the time, because effectively we don't need to have cashiers. Now, being able to service consumers who want goods delivered at home and want goods delivered from these stores maybe to their home, at the moment is using the gig economy. So these same-day deliveries being delivered at an affordable cost are being achieved because retailers like Amazon, for example, are recruiting people who are not full-time employees and have all the full-time salaries, but are simply paid to deliver the goods as and when needed. It's what's known as the gig economy. But these are temporary solutions, and they're only temporary jobs, because an entire logistics automation revolution is coming, involving everything from drones to road robots, which we're already seeing running around cities such as Milton Keynes in the UK and across a number of US cities, autonomous trucks, which again are running up and down the West Coast highways in America, although most people don't realize that. Got automated warehouses, which are increasingly becoming the norm. The idea of putting robots on autonomous vans and effectively having a mobile autonomous warehouse, and even robots that deliver the goods from the back of the van to your front door was being worked on by a collaboration between Ford and Agility Robots. All of this is being worked on right now in order to take the cost out of the last mile delivery, to be able to deliver same day, but maybe even same hour deliveries just for the cost of electricity. And in fact, Amazon has been working hard on trying to reinvent the future. So it's got a number of different patents out for a number of different solutions. For example, urban drone hives. So having urban centers where drones can effectively scatter out like bees, delivering goods to the consumers. floating warehouses that sit above the city so that drones only have to go vertically up and down into people who live in flats, for example, and can deliver quite quickly down to those sorts of locations. And even, having vast underwater storages where we can basically summon products by having sensors on them that respond to certain signals and float to the surface. All pretty radical ideas that we're not likely to see in the next 2 to 3 years, but they're thinking ahead about how do we meet these last mile delivery requirements to consumers that expect the goods to be delivered in the same hour. And the pandemic, COVID-19, has simply added rocket fuel to this automation revolution. It's altered the norms of human society. Everything that we used to take for granted, shaking the hand of a stranger, hugging a friend, working together in an office, sitting in a crowded restaurant or crowded bar, paying with physical cash, even touching a friendly pet that runs up to you. Suddenly we don't do these anymore. We're told not to do these things. And it's changed the very way we behave. And it's also changing the way businesses have to respond to a world where we don't do these things anymore. It's created what's called an isolation economy. So people working from home, being able to realize that they can actually also be efficient from home. I was on a call last night where someone said that the organization they'd worked for had realized that they'd run their event virtually for the first time rather than having a 3-day break in Norway as they usually do. And actually, they were more productive doing it on, Zoom than they were when they were physically there because they got the whole thing over in a day, and they're never going to do it again. So there's a whole host of different transitional shifts taking place that are actually probably not going to be temporary. These things are going to exist long beyond the time period of the pandemic. And this pandemic is creating behaviors and expectations will just become embedded in the DNA of society. For example, we're forced to use online shopping versus physical and food delivery versus restaurants, which mean we're going to continuously see a boom in e-commerce and continually to see the death of large shopping malls and change of business models for food establishments. We're going to continue to avoid handling cash, which means that tap-to-go service we saw at Albert Heijn's and this cashless, contactless payment systems, especially using things like facial recognition, is just going to take off. Soon, no one will handle cash. We're going to increasingly want on-demand access to goods and services. So there will be an ever-increasing need to be able to supply goods to consumers within the same hour using automated urban warehouses. And people are going to prefer robots and drones over humans simply because there's no physical contact. They're going to feel that it's safer to take stuff out of a machine than they are take it out of the hands of someone else. They're also going to move to prefer locally produced goods and services. We're seeing a boom in reshoring. People are refinding things that they forgotten existed, the local butcher, the local baker, the local farm shop. So there's going to be a demand for local fresh produce. So we're going to see a boom in things like vertical automated farming operations and local shops. Working from anywhere is going to become the new norm, not just working from home, but working from anywhere, especially when 5G starts to take off this year and next year, which means we're able to have sort of real telepresence and remote working capabilities. This will create a reduction in traffic. We won't see the mass, commute to work anymore. It's also going to free up a large amount of car parking spaces, which quite simply won't be needed, specifically in urban areas where people are going to increasingly use on-demand transport mechanisms like Uber, for example. People are going to continue to avoid mass gatherings and continue to social distance long after the pandemic has been deemed safe. So we're going to see a decline in group-based activities such as cinema and the theatres. But we will see a boom in home-based entertainment and in things like virtual reality and gaming. And finally, people are going to be continuously looking to minimize the amount of human-to-human contact. So this cashierless just walk out shopping is going to become the new normal. So one of the questions is, how do we provide the infrastructure for all of this? We've seen airships and, drone hives and all the things that Amazon is thinking about doing in the future. But what are we about right now? We're seeing this movement away from shopping every weekend and going to shopping malls. How can we provide the infrastructure for the future? And can we do it by repurposing the past? Well, actually, the answer is yes, but in a different way. So there's been a big move recently by Amazon going around buying up a number of these old abandoned malls, or Toys R Us stores, or JCPenney stores, or Sears stores, these huge stores where we used to go to every weekend but no longer do, have suddenly been bought by the e-commerce retailers such as Amazon. But why are they doing that? Well, there's four major reasons. Number one is they're big. They can store a lot of goods. Amazon is now becoming the world's biggest retailer by quite a considerable margin. It has a lot of products. It has millions upon millions of SKUs in its product range. It needs to be able to store them, and it needs to be able to store them somewhere out of town. And that's exactly where these places are located. So they're in close proximity to population centres, and they also have really, really good transport links. The whole concept of shopping malls was that people had to drive to them. So they were all near highways. And they've also got pre-existing infrastructure. They've got lighting, they've got water, they've got sewerage, they've got everything they need. So rather than break new ground and build new buildings, Amazon has found that actually we have the perfect locations and the perfect buildings pretty much. We just need to empty them of all the stores, and we can actually put our products in there. And that's exactly what they're doing. So we're repurposing these old shopping malls that have been abandoned into new fulfillment centres. And that's our big storage location. But then how do we move the goods between these major fulfillment centres and the smaller urban ones? Again, in the world where we're looking at climate change and we're looking at reducing the number of trucks on the road. Again, we're going to go back to the past. So the idea of moving things through pneumatic tubes actually isn't a new idea. So we talk about the Hyperloop right now, but this is not a new idea. This is an old idea that's been repurposed. So in the turn of the century, people were looking at using pneumatic tubes to move people around. And in fact, working examples of them were created in places like London. But they were used to move small items across entire cities. In fact, if we look at Paris, here is the pneumatic tube network across Paris. But there were also pneumatic tube networks across Munich, Prague, London, and Berlin. So the idea of moving items around this urban conurbation using underground tubes has actually been an old idea, but one that has been gathering dust for a long time. Only now we're looking at saying, well, can we not do that? Because in the past, if you used to be able to move everything from, as this article identifies, goldfish to cats, well, surely we can move physical products using this exact same mechanism. And this idea is something that companies have already picked up on. So an organization has now been working with Ocado to create a whole series of tubes across London in order to send 72,000 carriages per hour, moving goods around these congested urban centres. So let's have a look at that.
The progress of technology accelerates at incredible speed. Magway is at the cutting edge of this revolution. Having developed the most game-changing goods and parcels transport system in the world, utilising existing pipe technologies with our world-renowned experience of magnetic motors. A system that will travel beneath and above ground for a pipe network, connecting distribution centres to consolidation centres, targeting the market for logistics, especially e-commerce, parcel and grocery delivery. With only half a second between carriages, efficiency and reliability is ensured. Easy integration to existing facilities, high bandwidth across the country, 24/7 to meet an ever-increasing urban demand. Autonomous transit, sustainable infrastructure with zero emissions, improved air quality, reduced congestion, less packaging, fewer road accidents, all weather, making better use of space, creating opportunities for denser, more vertical, residential and commercial development, improved customer service, efficient, predictable, saving costs in operations, saving costs in capital investment, creating a new delivery utility for the UK and for the rest of the world. Delivering faster for a better tomorrow. Delivering the future today. Magway.
So Magway there is working on developing these tubes between all of the distribution centres and the fulfillment centres, actually moving those goods underground and overground as we saw. And even things like the Hyperloop, you know, the movement of people as well as products is actually getting an acceleration during this pandemic, because people are using the time to actually think, can we, develop these new transportation mechanisms? And as you remember, each wave has a new communication mechanism, a new transport mechanism, and a new power source. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. We're seeing electric power combined with these tube logistics solutions and 5G technology communications. So it's moving these goods to these urban logistics centers, but what will they look like? Well, again, they're going to be using all of the technology of the sixth wave that we talked about earlier, and they're going to look a bit like this.
This is the first Common Sense Robotics micro-fulfillment center. It is operated by hundreds of robots, fulfills thousands of orders every single day, and delivers over 10,000 different types of products to online customers around it.
Up until today, robotic fulfillment centers take up anywhere between a size of 4 football fields to about 20 football fields. And you just can't fit that into a city. Our first site, the site that we are in, is actually 1/10 of a football field in size.
In order to fit our site into small, tight urban spaces, we've designed every single element of it to optimize for space efficiency. We have hundreds of robots of different types traveling in all directions, whether it is on the ground or on the shelving units. And they can meet each other anywhere on the map, and that really enables us to fulfill the full set of what's needed for a grocery basket out of this site.
A typical order would take less than 5 minutes to fulfill end-to-end. So 5 minutes from the moment the consumer places that order online to the moment that that order is ready for dispatch and goes to delivery.
So our vision for the future is actually a network of micro-fulfillment centers in the centers of cities that support each other and enable us to move things faster, more accurately.
When you order groceries online, you would get these groceries in less than 1 hour to your doorstep. As simple as that.
So that's Common Sense Robotics, now known as Fabric Robotics, talking about creating these automated warehouses, fully automated warehouses that can deliver goods within 1 hour, stored in a network of urban logistics centers. The question is, of course, where we're going to put them. Real estate in urban centers is incredibly expensive. So where can you put these urban logistics centers and create this network?
What are underutilized spaces in cities that have reasonable rents that can enable 2-hour delivery of almost any item to a consumer?
Parking lots in dense urban areas have such an untapped potential to them.
We did this report, and just in 5 US cities, we found over $80 billion in parking. Across all 5 cities, supply was greater than demand. In some cases, there were 60% just empty parking stalls.
The amount of parking lots underutilized across the United States of America is staggering. People are consuming transportation as a service rather than as an asset. And this is impacting the way we think about infrastructure. If I don't own a car, I don't need to park it.
I think the demand for parking will continue to decline because people are using Uber and Lyft and getting around without their own cars.
I think you'll start seeing all this great space that traditionally was utilized just for cars in the middle of really dense areas being utilized for other applications.
A parking structure or underground facility, that's tricky, right? It's not that livable, it's deep, doesn't get a lot of natural light. But spaces like that are already in the right location because it was convenient for someone to park.
So if we can find a way to turn those parking lots into distribution locations, and they're spread all over New York, all over Chicago, all over Boston, and we can turn them into micro-logistics locations, well, boom. We've managed to find ourselves not within 2 hours of every consumer, but 10 minutes of every consumer.
We are utilizing underground parking lots that cost us a fraction compared to a store 6 or 12 feet above us, which allows us to create more value to our customers and these customers to their customers.
We're going to transform a lot of real estate in the 21st century with this drive of e-commerce. And by making better usage out of it, we can lower costs in cities, which we need to do. We can reduce pollution in cities, which we need to do. And we can make the city work for so many more of its residents by bringing these services closer to every part of the population, and not only to those who can afford it by paying a premium price.
And so if you live in a city and you can get your groceries faster and cheaper than going to the supermarket, that's pretty valuable. And that's what we're here to do.
So there's the potential to convert underground car parking as these, fulfillment centres that currently are just sat there being underutilised, but also the above ground buildings, because it's usually they're underneath a building, into potential urban malls with their own robotic fulfillment centres. And that's exactly what we're seeing. So car parks could effectively become the next land gold mine. For example, there's 100 million being spent at the moment converting a 70s car park, an underground 70s car park in the heart of the West End in London, into a massive, shopping complex. And the way these shopping complexes are going to look is effectively they're going to have a fulfillment centre underneath them, and then you will have the malls and stuff which are supplied via the fulfillment centre underneath them, and then you can have at the top, more entertainment-based facilities such as cinemas or the such like restaurants, etc. So we're seeing a combination of elements coming together into a single facility to completely repurpose it from just storing cars into being a multi-purpose, entertainment, retail, and also distribution centre. So a new supply chain is emerging, what I call the PAL supply chain, one where we've got increasingly personalised products, service, and experiences, where the supply chain is being automated end-to-end across manufacturing, delivery, and planning, but actually where it's local, with local production, local storage, and local retail facilities. And this is what the future's retail supply chain looks like. In order to have a look at companies that are actually implementing this right now, we have to go across to China and have a look at JD.com. And it looks a little bit like this.
For over a decade, JD.com has focused on developing and applying state-of-the-art technologies to build an efficient retail supply chain in order to provide unparalleled customer experience. With the exponential growth of e-commerce, robotics and automation has become the enabling technology for us to achieve unmatched efficiency and quality of service in our fulfillment process. At JD, we increasingly rely on automation to fulfill our promise for same-day and next-day delivery for more than 300 million customers. We have developed a wide range of robots, including delivery drones, autonomous delivery vehicles, and fully automated warehouses, and keep redefining the experience of e-commerce.
But our vision is even bigger than that. We want to enable other retailers to offer the same thing. We truly believe the future of shopping is boundaryless. Consumers everywhere, not just JD.com's customers, should be able to buy whatever they want, whenever and wherever they want it.
So that's the future of retail. You have to remember that this disruption has only just begun. Companies like JD.com and Amazon are investing massive amounts of money in developing this technology. But they're not doing it because they're charities. They're doing it because they're realizing it's creating entirely new business models, entirely new ways of reaching customers, entirely new ways of capturing data. But they're also realizing they can sell that technology. So like the gentleman there at the end of the JD.com video says, we want to enable other retailers to use this. But of course they have to pay. So this becomes a whole new business model, but it drives this exponential increase in technological adoption and obviously all of the disruption. And maybe the way we handle this is we look again at these old, tired shopping malls and underground car parks and think, we can repurpose these into the facilities we need in order to support this 21st century shopping revolution. And in order to take advantage of that, our business leaders need to realize that actually what they need as much as new machines is new mindsets, new business models, and new ways of doing business. Thank you very much. My name is Culey.